Good day, my friend. Welcome to the Strong Ambition Podcast. So today we have a special Whiskey and Barbells episode with Rich Girardin. Rich Girardin's been a longtime friend. I met him at Focus Fitness. He's an athletic therapist himself, and he's been on the podcast a couple times before. He was on Whiskey and Barbells with AJ, I think just over 2 years ago, and it was episode 71. We had some really good discussion there around strength and some injury prevention stuff. He's an athletic therapist, and then we had another one on episode 78, just a one-on-one. That was a Zoom call I had with him, and it was great. We really dove into a lot of injury prevention strategies and ideas. And this one, again, that's fundamentally his specialty. He's an athletic therapist. And I was able to really quiz him on a bunch of different ideas. Now, this is an in-person Whiskey and Barbells episode. And we were actually supposed to have it with AJ, but he was a little bit tied up for the day. So we ended up just, hey, let's shoot the shit. Let's talk something about, how strength overlaps with athletic therapy. And that's his specialty. He actually runs his own clinic called Perimeter Therapy, and he's helped me a ton. I actually learned the concept of a T-spine rotation from him, which has massively helped my shoulders in preventing them, treating them when they had issues, and even preventing issues after. And I can't recommend them enough. But this is a really fun episode because it's in person. You'll notice the flow of the conversation is better. Like, you can just literally keep pace, go back and forth. We even have a debate when it comes to things around when's the right time to stretch, what kind of stretching to do. And it's fun because he actually pushes back. I push back on him. And so we have a really good discussion, and there's something to learn here. Now, I will say, and this is why I'm kind of doing the intro, is because the audio isn't great. It was, unfortunately, so I have this microphone setup, these Bluetooth are supposed to work, and they're charged, they're fine. And I have no fucking idea why. It just didn't, it was off. It was just off. And it didn't record a thing. Recorded the whole video from this one camera without any audio. I don't know. Anyways, the audio from the recording camera on the other angle luckily did capture all of it, but the audio is kind of echoey. It's not great. So I apologize in advance, but you will get a great lesson. You'll have a fun conversation. It doesn't sound terrible. I listened to it myself. So apologize in advance, but you'll get the beef of it, right? So without further ado, let's dive into this, a really fun conversation around strength training and injury prevention with Rich Girardin. Cheers, Rich.
Yeah, buddy. I haven't seen you in a while.
No kidding.
It's been a minute.
An official one-on-one Whiskey and Barbells with Rich Girardin.
Yeah.
Pleasure having you here, sir.
Absolutely.
So, we were just talking about this because I wanted to dive right into just you are an athletic therapist, your specialty is in therapy, and I was going to ask you about scrolling. Does your social media feed at all gravitate towards some rehab stuff? Do you see things come up at all, or are you just random shit?
Nah, we're on my feed. Mm-hmm. Oh man, just tons of dogs. Lots of puppies, right?
Dogs?
Yeah, just tons of puppies, man. Puppies, a few guitar licks. What else? Besides that, I'd say probably a bit of therapy stuff in there as well. Not tons and tons, but kind of depends on what's going on. What I've been scrolling with the most, right?
Yeah.
Depends. I know your Dr. Mike there. I feel like that guy's been showing up on my feed a lot as well.
For sure.
Yeah. So depending on what it is, if I've been looking at more training stuff as opposed to therapy stuff, then yeah. But we follow just tons and tons of physiotherapy clinics, right? Mm-hmm. So, I mean, you get tons and tons of content in regards to that.
And so, because you're in that content,
yeah,
because that's your field, and so I have my criticisms of that kind of looks stupid or that looks interesting.
Right.
You see Dr. Jean Gauguin, that's AJ who started watching that stuff, and now I see him adopt a bunch of her stuff. So some great stuff out there. What's some good stuff? It could be just exercises, but I'm curious if you've seen some new ideas around therapy, or if it's just unique ideas for exercises.
Yeah. I gotta be honest, right now, probably not too much. 90% of my life is trying to finish this MBA program right now. Sure. So it's always reading articles. So I can talk to you about business nonstop. But no, I do find, at least with the feed, what is good sometimes is there's stuff that piques my curiosity, and then I'm like, okay, I want to know more about this, right? So I do think from that standpoint of looking at the feeds is good. But in terms of any new stuff right now,
what piqued your curiosity?
Oh, in the past, I remember all the great cook stuff was like I dive deep into that at some point, right?
Great Cook, tell people who he is.
Yeah. So Great Cook is a guy, so he's one of the 4 main guys that started the whole functional movement.
The FMS training,
and the SFMA kind of stuff. And then the other guy that actually I do find interesting is Greg Rose. Greg Rose he's part of those guys, but he started his own thing going with the Titleist Performance Institute for like golfers. So it's kind of interesting. Like they talk about it kind of builds out a lot of the concepts of the SFMA stuff, where especially with golfers, where they have a much greater emphasis on things like hip rotation, right, T-spine mobility, obviously, just for that swing, how to generate more power, and then they just kind of incorporate everything. So he's a chiro, right? So depending on what you believe or whatnot, but it's like I like those guys that can like dumb stuff down and just really like explain to like anyone where you're like, oh yeah, right? Like especially like if like you bring it down to like your parents, for example, who know nothing about their anatomy. If you can dumb something down to someone where they can understand it, like I love it, because you and me, like, we're probably so used to explaining stuff in technical terms to patients, right, or to clientele. But when like you can bring it down to their level, where it's like, oh yeah, that makes total sense. Yeah. That's like an amazing like talent to me.
Well, it's a super important skill for both teaching clients and talking on social media for marketing. I will routinely not use the word hypertrophy. I routinely try to say muscle building very specifically, because only if people are in the space will they actually like hypertrophy. Most people actually might know what it is, but I always say it specifically because that could be so over. Like I was amazed even in the last couple of years when I used the term satiety. It's like, yeah, that'll help with satiety. It's like, what's satiety? I'm like, fuck, I thought that was common knowledge, and it's not. You've got to be. It's your feeling of fullness. You have to be very descriptive, and the idea that you have to write to a 3rd grade level or 5th grade level for everyone to be able to get it, and it's like, hey, if you explain it to that much, people can be more adapting to those ideas.
So you think about like the population that you deal with, probably less than 1% actually know like all those terms, all those technical terms, right? Like you did your degree in the kinesiology and food science, right? You did your master's, right? So like no one's exposed
to that level.
Right?
No
like, especially this, like, so that's why I like following some of those guys, just to improve the way that I can explain things, right? So I do find myself gravitating to some of those guys.
So I like that you brought up FMS, because like a lot of the things we're going to talk about is like what you think about it, pros and cons, overrated, underrated. FMS, let's go into this. So it will explain what it is. It's a functional movement screen. Essentially something that both therapists and personal trainers and everyone can kind of use. They give you a system of being able to do different movement tests. It could be as simple as reaching behind your back. There is an overhead squat. I used to use that with people, and I kind of actually didn't see as much of a point to it, or maybe I didn't really interpret it. I like the idea of a simple movement screen. I still use it on people, but I did feel like I didn't adopt it long term as much as I thought I would, because I also didn't like what they did. Was they did this test. They said to do it cold, so if there's cracks or anything, your shoulder cracked or whatever, it's like, okay, we're going to take that as like a 2 or whatever. But then if you do it twice and your shoulder doesn't crack, you're not warm, like, is that really relevant? So there's like, it's a gray zone with the 1, 2, 3 system, because they would rate it 1, 2, or 3, right? And then you'd put this information into like a kind of like their system, and it would spit out a bunch of exercise. And so that was something that Elite Physiotherapy had done for the gym. How do you feel with the system? Pros, cons? How do you adopt it now?
I don't mind. Like, so I never actually use the full system itself, but what I really like about it is just the regional dependence, where it's mobility, joint stability, mobility when you go up the kinetic chain. So for example, like your ankle is a mobility joint, right? That's where you get a lot of movement from. You move to your knee, that's a stability. You move up to your hip, that's a mobility, right? So whether it's a mobile joint or a stable joint, if you don't have enough mobility, let's say in your ankle, something has to pick up the slack, right? So that's why, generally speaking, people who lack ankle dorsiflexion have a lot more knee pain when they get into deep into like plyometrics and stuff like that, right? I think it's if you don't have 6 inches of knee bend where like your knee's touching the wall, then like I think that, like there are studies that they always say is that you're 19 times more likely to have patellar tendonitis, right? Because your knee has to pick up that slack, right? The way that I always just describe it is imagine putting yourself in a ski boot and then jumping off something. If you don't have the mobility, like something's got to take up that force, right? So going to the FMS, what I like about that is knowing which joints are mobile, which ones are supposed to be stable, and then are you compensating at some point in time, right? So like if you can't get down to that overhead squat position, like that test is good in the sense of okay, doing it with your heels elevated. Now if you can get in that position, no problem, then that means then obviously you have an issue with mobility at your ankle joint, right? So I like using some of those just to try to distinguish okay, what's going on with the body and what's restricting you, and then using it in that capacity. But I can't tell you the last time I actually like looked at it and was like, oh, you scored a 2 or a 3 or whatnot, right?
Yeah.
So I like grabbing aspects of it, right? Kind of like everything that I do. Where I'm like, oh, like if you do like some acupuncture, it's like, there's certain things I like, right? Like I don't buy into the whole Eastern philosophy of it. But that being said, there are some benefits obviously to it.
What's the Eastern philosophy of it?
The Eastern philosophy is just the yin and the yang that you're balancing.
It actually affects your chi.
Yeah. Yeah. So like everything is like a pathway channel, right? Like you have a heart line, right? The liver line, and all that kind of stuff. So I can't jump into too much of that details of that stuff just because I've never studied that deep into it. But that being said, 3,000 years of Chinese medicine, obviously there's some benefit.
There could be some benefit there, and we're still using it. And like, so because you done it to my knee, and you did it with a stim, right? You actually loosened it up a ton.
Yeah.
How do you use acupuncture now? You use it like what you had explained to me was that you get this. Basically, you're actually promoting more healing to the area because you puncture it a little bit.
Yeah, you're getting some blood flow to the area itself, right? So that's the way that I like to use it, and then using that stim as well, because when you insert the needle itself, you can get like that stimulus directly to the muscle that you're triggering.
Actually, like putting a little pulse of electricity into it. What is this? We might have talked about this before. What does this stim do? Because my understanding was just like it's kind of blood flow, but I also see it as trying to get a tissue to literally move and contract.
Yeah.
Because if something's injured early in an injury, and you leave it too sedentary, you leave it too dormant, it doesn't heal as well. But possibly with the stim, you're actually making that muscle contract a little bit when it would be hard to contract.
Yeah, so there's a whole bunch of different ways that you can use stim, and it really just depends on how you want to use it, right? So like there's a Russian setting, which can actually activate and fire off that muscle. So let's say if you're coming back from a surgery, trying to re-educate that muscle on how to fire off, you can set like the stim itself in the proper position. Let's say if you want to start firing off your quad after like an ACL injury, so do the contraction for you, and you can do the contraction with it. Generally speaking, people like to use stim as a way for like using like under the gate control theory. So best way that I always explain it is you bang your head. What do? You rub it, right? You're stimulating different nerves, so you're distracting, taking away from that pain. So that's why some people like to use it that way. What else? Like there's tons and tons of different ways that you can go about it using that stim.
So glad you raised that distraction, because this is something I think we can dive into or kind of rip on. It reminded me of foam rollers. So foam rollers, super common now. I mean, even actually when I got into the stage of strength training, that's right when to me that's when they're coming out. I didn't see it as much like it would have been over 10 years ago. I was getting into focus, and they're all foam rolling, and I was like, what's this thing? And it was like, oh man, this feels good. This is like a manual massage. And I generally believed it was actually loosening up my muscles.
Right.
And so I would just hammer my shoulders, which are always tight. Little to my knowledge, it's probably not loosening up a muscle. And I think essentially, and you can give me your interpretation of how it is. But my belief is what you just said is what happens more so when you're doing a massage or any sort of the ball rolling, anything. It's going to put pressure on the mechanoreceptors, and so because the pressure's on the mechanoreceptors, right after you have an immediate alleviation of the mechanoreceptors. The thing that tells your muscle in your brain, this is tight, you push into it, and then you let go of it, and it's like, okay, we're going to relax for a bit. And so you feel more immediate relaxation, and that's actually really going to be beneficial if you give it another stimulus that will adopt that new length that you want. So go into a stretch or go into a loaded stretch position after.
Right.
But if you just foam roll, if you just massage and you do nothing different, it has very little benefit long term. Now tell me how I'm wrong or how you interpret.
No, I agree with you 100%. Like generally speaking, if you're doing that rolling out, and everything that we always talk about, it's fun. Like I've talked about a million times. Like in terms of, like if it feels good, do it, right?
Yeah.
Like it's like I'm never gonna judge someone and be like, hey, no, you shouldn't do this. Like if that works for you, awesome, right? But yes, when it comes to foam rolling, like I agree with you in that aspect where hopefully it's just shutting down that muscle from being overactive, and then you're utilizing that to go into like a deep stretch, right? That way it's finally settled down and you can get into a deeper position where you can get some of those benefits.
Yeah.
So
to even before your lifts, right? Before you exercise, before you send it a new stimulus that's going to take forward. Yeah. It's like if you just do the foam rolling after everything, it's like, you're going to feel relaxed. That's fine. And as you mentioned, it feels good to do it. There are days where, because it puts me in a more relaxed state, like I don't do stretching after a foam rolling day. I will put on Netflix, I foam roll every single muscle in my body. Yeah. Holy shit, I feel relaxed. Now, net benefit there, massive reduction in cortisol. Yeah. I'm watching TV. I feel like I just had a massage, and you better believe I come back feeling fresh the next day. Yeah. Did that physically loosen my muscles? No, probably not. But I would say that it puts you in such a parasympathetic state of just like, I feel like I can really get a good sleep. I can go back into my training tomorrow. Now, if I did stretching after, probably more advantageous. But if I'm in a lazy mood, I just roll. Right?
For sure, right? And like, it'd be interesting. Like, that's one of the things I would actually have to read an article on it to actually see, hey, is there like any benefit to this long term, right? Especially when you do that, right? But yeah, like if that's your routine and it works for you and that helps you settle down and wind down,
nothing wrong with it. Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm going to come back to something we talked about before. Yeah. Which was ice. I think ice is. I don't mind bringing it up every time. Because
is it back in? Is it hot?
Well, ironically, it's a hot topic. But like, I always tell people to interpret it like based on its use and the net benefit. I try to articulate this for people. You ice if it's annoying you too much, plain and simple. Like if you're like, Angelina had her knee hurting recently. I'm like, you're not sleeping. Fucking ice it. Have an ibuprofen, because if you can't sleep, it's a net negative. Yeah. And she's like, no, it's okay. I was like, I know technically, theoretically, you would heal faster if you if you have inflammation. In theory, that's how it would work. But if I have something throbbing and I can't sleep, ice the motherfucker. But I also don't like it when people's like, oh, I didn't ice it. Oh, I'm supposed to ice it to actually recover better. It's like, it's not that big of a deal. Yeah. Right? So to me, icing is one of those things. Do it if it feels good, and it's especially in a scenario that it will help you relax the body, but don't feel like it's like your moral obligation to ice something, because it doesn't speed healing. Is that fair?
Yeah, so I've always been like, anything that's an acute setting, I've always been like an ice guy. Okay. Just me personally. I've always been like, hey, try to reduce that inflammation.
No matter what.
Yeah, that's the way I've always looked at it myself personally. Everyone's got their different opinions on it, right?
And can you explore why?
Yeah. So the whole reason, the reason why I say that is to try to decrease any kind of inflammation in that area. Yes, it's going to slow down that healing, because that inflammation is actually a good thing in terms of,
in order to get the things, the everything that you want for all the recovery agents. It's all being sent there for a reason.
Yeah. But the way that I kind of look at that, it's twofold. Is one, helps to deal with pain. pain. First and foremost, right? So I look at it as if I can help reduce pain, I'm going to be probably going to be able to get you up and moving a little bit quicker. Like, let's just talk about a knee. Like, if your knee's bothering you, if I can reduce that pain, now does that mean we can get you walking a little bit quicker? Yes, it's going to take a little bit longer to heal, but is that going to offset it because we're not moving, right? Which is going to affect those proprioceptors.
So
right?
I remember you saying this.
Yeah,
this is where I came back to. I was thinking just literally the other day. I was like, man, like why? You're talking about an acute setting where you have a strain or a sprain, maybe a tear, and then you're saying I want you to move faster. It's like, but if it's acute, you're not doing much in the acute setting, anyways. This is just where I respectfully disagree. Is like, just give it to pain.
Yeah.
And the other thing I thought you were going to say, which I do remember was a theory, was because it's such a massive rush of these things going to one area, is it could be causing other tissue damage in the process of the healing, like the collateral damage of the other tissues. Right? Theoretically, it's like if it's such a massive load, yes, you're going to slow down the healing of that targeted area, but maybe the other tissues in the surrounding area that are taking this big inflammation and swelling might have less of an issue.
Yeah. So I guess the way that I would kind of just counter that is I look at everything now. Like, let's say if you have like major back surgery, you're not resting. Get up, walk around. That's the first thing they want you to do. Like bed rest used to be what they wanted you to do, but now they want you to get active moving, right? Which is also going to help push some of that swelling, or it's going to bring some swelling, but at least it's going to get some blood flow to the area, right?
Not to mention you got to be careful not to be seated or flat too long, because like that's just backs do not handle seated positions at all. It's the worst thing for the back. So
then same with like ankle sprains, right? Like I've seen or if someone's got a broken foot, they put them in a walking boot, right? Because they don't want everything just to get tightened up and start restricting that mobility. So that's why I always think, hey, it's best to start moving right away. Like in terms of that.
Yeah,
we're talking about that.
So, I mean, you're trying to move right away. Like, I mean, that's where.
But is that right? I don't know. Right?
Yeah,
that's
so
just
like,
anecdotally what has worked, right?
So, in that scenario, like, and this is also, we should also say, it depends, right? Are we talking about your wrist? Are we talking about your shoulder? Your knee? Let's just use a little bit of a point. Like, something that's likely to happen to people is what I think can be helpful here. So, giving a scenario, let's just literally use the ankle. It's a very common one. Someone rolls their ankle. Your ankle now it feels like it's about to swell up. It feels like it hurts a lot. In the acute setting, you say ice that mofo tonight, right?
No, but compression, all that good stuff.
Compression is actually something for sure in the recommendations they haven't taken out of, but they have seemed to be more skeptical on the icing. Now
for sure.
But in that acute setting, you're also saying, like, would you then tell the person to walk that day or the next 24 hours?
Depends how bad it is.
Depends, great.
Right? So like if you got a second degree, you're not going to be walking because the pain's going to be too great.
Right. And still icing that.
Still icing it, Okay. But can you now, is it too painful to walk just on its own? Okay, now are you going to do assisted, like walking with crutches? Because ideally that's what you would want to do prior to just being off of it completely, right? And then also that way that when it comes to a rehab standpoint, those proprioceptors, you're not having to retrain them from scratch, right?
So I think that to go off of your point, which I support, if you use that second step, and I'll also go back to, like, you're not fucking up your ankle because you iced it. My point is just always been like, don't feel morally obligated. I'm actually feel more inclined to be, I got to go get this looked at, and I'm just going to wait it out. I'm more worried if someone says I ice it. It's like they ate their vegetables. I'm like, look, that is a way for you to mitigate pain. And then, as you just mentioned, it's like, so you could walk, so you could do therapy, so you can improve it. But if a person is just saying, I sprained my ankle, so I just iced it. It's like, to walk more, like to do more, I'm in full support. I actually go back to what you had said. If it feels better, which it will feel better if you ice it, I'm in full support. I will bias that. If you want to hedge your bets on something, my personal bet would be, okay, if it's strained, and like I say, if it helps sleep, ice it for sure. Take Tylenol if you have to get sleep, because that's going to be your best healing process.
Generally speaking,
And then I would say anytime you want to ice it because it's too painful, go ahead. But I would say put off icing as much as you can, as long as you have movement. But if you need ice to have movement, then have movement. That would be my bias.
So let's look at it this way then. So I'll ask ask, I'll kind of flip it on you.
Please.
So if you have that spring, right, and you're saying, hey, don't go on it, right, because there's going to be too much inflammation.
If it's like immediate.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the way that I generally look at everything, generally speaking, for all injuries, is just the phases. Number one, we got to get rid of swelling before we can get our range of motion. And there's always going to be some bleed over period during that, right? That you can work on your range of motion while you're decreasing that swelling. And then from that from that range of motion, then there's that third aspect of strength. You're not going to train strength unless you have range of motion, right? So now, if you're not walking on it, everything's probably getting generally tight on you, right? Whether it's your calves, so on and so forth, right? So now you're having to fight an uphill battle of regaining your range of motion, which you wouldn't have had to do if, let's say, you're walking on it, maintaining its full range of motion, even though you're dealing with some pain. But if you're just the general public, like now, if you're an athlete, that's a different story where it's like, hey, we need you back next week, right?
Yeah.
2 weeks from now. If you're your dad, your mom, whoever, right? Is that as important that area gets completely healed to 100%? Like in a shorter time frame?
Yeah,
or is it better that, hey, they're back to mobility, functional movement, just walking every day, where it's, hey, who cares if it's at 100% yet? Like, we'll take 70. 70% is great. You're walking normally on it. You can do more or less everything that you need to do. But we don't got to fight the uphill battle of regaining that range of motion now, because we had you walking on it, right? So that's the way, generally speaking, I would look at it. So.
And I think I have a very similar spectrum of what you mentioned. And actually, you even kind of helped me on the idea of it.
So like, it depends.
It always depends. We're still just talking about a sprained ankle, common injury, or something like that, right? I think what I push against the ice conversation is like, it's not the solution, it's just a part of it, right?
It's a modality.
It's a modality, but it's the only thing most people know to think that they should be responsible for.
Totally.
And I wish that they knew other things and the importance of what it even plays, the role it plays. And what you had just mentioned there was that spectrum of healing, where you had said reduce swelling, then you said improve range of motion, and then strengthen. And to me, it was reduce pain. Once pain tolerance is at a level that you can improve range of motion, then I always say it's stretching, strengthen, reprogram, right?
But why is pain happening?
Well, I mean, so you're going to say swelling, aren't you?
Most of the time, it's going to be because of the inflammation.
So, and I don't like that cause and effects language, because that cause and effect language, I think, it's the trauma. I just like, and this even goes into nutrition and health. People say inflammation is a problem. Inflammation is a problem. The fucking word inflammation is inflammatory.
Inflammation can be good, though.
Precisely.
Yes.
I actually think this is a perfect analogy. I do think that it's like blaming the ambulance for car crashes. Right. It's like, we got to stop those ambulances from coming out, guys. Like, stop having the cause for them to fucking come out. When you say inflammation, like it's the net negative, I don't think it's like fair for the body. Right?
Yes. So when I deal with most injuries, you got to look at it from my perspective. I know what you're saying.
Flag. It's the red flag.
It's not the red flag. It's that 90% of the time, like, let's say if I'm dealing with an ankle, like sprain, the ankle's a balloon, right? There's tons of, like, it's a balloon. We got to get rid of that inflammation in it. So that's where I'm looking at. Now, if you're looking at your subacute inflammation of, like, hey, someone's got like a shoulder impingement that's been going on for a year. Yeah, that inflammation's not the end of the world. I think you're always going to have that.
Yeah, so. And I think, like...
So I get what you're saying. You're not, you're totally right.
And to come from your angle, to give better perspective on your angle that I didn't look at, was like the importance of bringing down inflammation. Because just recently, like just this last week, Angelina had a knee issue. And she couldn't get rid of swelling, and I couldn't do anything with movement. And now that we're talking about it, I'm like, probably should have fucking iced it.
And that's the other thing too. Like, I'm talking right now, we're just talking about acute injuries.
Yeah.
Like, you turned over on your ankle playing volleyball, landing on someone's foot, right?
Yeah.
Or, you're in soccer, someone hit your knee, right?
Yeah.
So that's what, like, we're just talking the acute inflammation right now, not something that's, hey, this has been
repetitive shoulder issue, repetitive ankle issue.
But I do agree with you. That's actually a great point in terms of when you talk about inflammation, where it's like, it's not necessarily like an evil thing. Right?
It's not the devil.
Totally.
People, I'm not sure if you see it in social media, but it is the fucking devil. It's all that and insulin. It's like both of those things are supposed to fucking be there. Like, let's go back a step step and say, why is it doing the thing it's doing? And it's like, when you talk about inflammation in this case, and it is like I say, I'm taking it in perspective, and I think it's valuable. It's like, the depends is where it really applies here, because would I have not been so stubborn on my perspective, I think, this last week to think maybe ice could have helped her do her training better?
Yeah.
And we don't know.
Yeah.
I do wonder if she would have had a better range of motion, because there's no exercise we could do that was like relaxing that knee. It was just something going on with her body where it was really promoting kind of inflammation to
it could also just send that signal just to shut down, like just to relax.
Numb it, just to numb it. Just not overwhelming it.
Yeah, exactly. Like that muscle just kind of settle down itself, which might also allow that increased range of motion.
Yeah.
But like to say, hey, this is the end all be all. No,
and I think
nothing that we'll talk about. Like I'll never be like, yeah, this is 100%. Yeah, right. There's a handful of things. Like I think strength training, right, no matter what it is always the thing.
The best corrective exercise you can do.
I mean corrective exercise.
I would say the most fundamental form of healthy. Health. I think that is the fundamental of it, right?
Yeah.
Walking is my number one. If you can't do anything walking, which is massively underrated still from a lot of people.
I agree with you 100%.
And now I'm seeing because it's the one or say two, because protein's the other one. The fitness fads that are like come in and you get annoyed with them. And it's like I'm still okay with walking. Like if people are upset with their step count, I'm fucking all for that, because it is the lowest barrier to entry for people who are busy and they need to not think of cardio. And I'm all about with the metabolism being like BMR, and then it's your thermal effect of food, exercise activity, non-exercise. And I know like Lane Norton will say non-exercise is not walking. Like it is though. People need to see activity outside of the gym, so that's why walking is the base, right? And then strength training is the very next thing that will help everything else be corrected to be balanced. I do want to say though, end all be all, because we're talking injuries, we're talking about the things that are kind of hyped. And we talked about it a bit before, and I think we got to dive into it again. Static stretching. Yeah. Because I still think this is an overrated idea from most Gen Pop, even athletes. And the athletes even feel guilty about not stretching. And then I'll get some people doing my strength training class and we don't stretch in this. I'm like, because if I hold a stretch with you for 2 minutes, it's not going to do much today. Yeah. You're going to feel a little pain relief or something, but let's dive into it. Your perspective of static stretch.
Yeah, static stretch, you'll still get some benefit to it. But that being said, it's not going to be as great as PNF stretching, right? Which has always been shown what's been the greatest. I know last time we talked about it, and I haven't seen anything that's updated with it, because I remember doing the NASM corrective. One of their courses, and per their literature, they're still saying that from 30 seconds to a minute is your kind of golden zone there for static stretching. Anything above a minute, there's no added benefit. That's based off what I've seen from them. I haven't seen anything since then in regards to that. But yeah, PNF stretching is always what is going to give you the greatest gains if you're trying to increase your mobility in whatever it is.
Yeah, and so I heard this really well described on the guys on Mind Pump, and it was I swear I've heard it before, but I need to hear it again. Yeah. If you have, because people need to understand that flexibility is not mobility, it's not access to the range of motion, right? If you have a dead body, a cadaver, someone's just there, and you can move their fucking joint any way you want, because the nervous system's turned off. So if I could put a shoulder or anything, any place I want if the person's not conscious, not aware of it, this means that it's not physically the muscle tightening like we think the rope's being too tight. What it is more so is that your body feels a range of motion, and we just talked about those mechanoreceptors. There's these things in the muscle that tell the muscle how far it's been stretched, and if we're used to being there. If I go back here, my arm's I'm not used to being there. You're a tight boxer, you're used to being here, right? So this is terrifying for my shoulder, and it's brain to muscle. It's way more about that. And actually, the best thing that I've understood, PNF and forms of PNF stretching, which is to contract at the far end range, which you could even look at it as do strength training at far end ranges with very light loads and progressively overload it.
Yeah. You're saying, for example, if you want to do a pec stretch, you would have some weight in your hand. Let's say if you're laying on a bench, you're saying like go to the end range, fire off.
Literally what I did, and it completely changed my shoulder.
Yeah. The only thing that I would wonder about that,
and especially if you do the crack method, the contract, antagonist contract, then relax and repeat.
Yeah. I don't think there'd be definitely any harm to that, but I just wonder if, like, so let's say if you're doing like a hamstring, like when you're doing that contraction, you can go like full tilt on that contraction. Do you find that you get enough weight when you get down into that position that you can do a very strong contraction without bringing it all the way up?
Oh, so that was the interesting thing is I found when I did the crack method for my chest, I started with that. And when you are so new to that range, like I was just doing it in my boxers today, you put 10 pounds in their hand, they are fucking wincing because you get them so deep and they're like wincing. I had to put someone lower on a Bosu because it was too low for them, and I put 5s in their hands because they're so weak there. So is that enough at far people's end range? Yes, on the chest.
You think?
On the hamstring. Hamstring's different. The thing that I would do with the hamstring is you would want, I think you can get partial benefits from this. Not like really improving the range of motion unless you do that hard isometric, that's a hard contraction. So I would put it against more an immovable object like a wall. So you put your hamstring on the wall. 100%. And then that way that hamstring is pushing sternly. Now I call it like a mobility prep. It's not as, I hate to use the term functional, but I want to say functional mobility where you're really improving a lot more, unless it's an isometric. I'll do a band version of it as a prep movement just to loosen people's hands.
See, when it comes to like a chest, I would think you'd be better off like in a door frame walking in.
I used to
drive, push.
Super interesting there is I find that you almost don't push intuitively enough.
Like hard enough.
If you're supported, you're so focused on just the chest.
With your problem, right?
Hey, I'd love for you to try it. Prove
no, I don't know. I don't know if there's any research. I'd have to look into this. I'd be curious as to knowing like, do you need to have that full maximal contraction in order for it to be like a true PNF to have those same gains, or would it only have to be a contraction at 20%, 30%? Because I think about like if I had weights like 10 pounds, I'd be getting a hell of a stretch down here. But as soon as I contract it, I'd be able to bring the weight.
Okay, and then I'm glad you raised that. Because that's where I started to get comfortable to start a deeper chest fly. So I was doing this for, probably a month or so, and it made a difference on my shoulders. Like, wow, what but then it plateaued.
Right.
Okay, so just similar like that, the other hamstring thing, like it'll help until it's not enough.
But is that now static stretching, where it's just just hanging out down here, and you're still getting that added benefit?
The benefit came from the antagonist contract. So it was like what I would do is I'd pull it in, and I was like, this is kind of easier now. But when I did the antagonist contract, when I go the opposite, I was like, okay, that's still deep. But again, I did feel like it plateaued. So then, when I was working with a powerlifting coach, his thing that he told me even before I was working with him, he's like, you just got to do slow eccentric, extremely deep, light dumbbell chest fly.
Like controlling the negative.
Controlling the eccentric. That was another cool thing I learned from Nada and him was like, slow eccentrics are one of the best ways to improve range of motion if you can do it in that exercise. Because you're just really programming that. And so he had me do that, but then he had me progressively overload. This part of the movement didn't matter. Because if he has you do 15 reps of like, you're going all the way deep, really slow and coming up, all the way deep, the first 5 or 6 reps, you're like, it's fine. But then you get to 12 or 15, you're like, holy fuck, I'm exhausted. And then the next week, you put lowers the reps, you gotta go heavier. Man, I legitimately have not had my shoulders this good since before my surgery, and I want to say even before that. I haven't had this deep range of motion. So I'm a huge believer in it has to be strength in some form, whether it's isometric, eccentric at the far end range, if you expect the body to need to remember it.
No, I don't disagree with some of that for sure. Like I'm just wondering if part of that is feeling so great because you're working on this newfound range of motion, right?
Precisely
Like
what
on
it
that,
is.
yeah. But I guess the only thing that you do got to be careful for anybody listening to that is that you're not going too heavy.
Too heavy.
Where now you're blowing out shoulder, right? Where you're injuring yourself. But
Totally.
yeah, I definitely can, for sure.
Well,
I can see the benefit
what
of
I was saying-
treating that new range.
Exactly. What you had even mentioned is important. It's like similar to my story. You don't go. I didn't go into it deep.
Yeah.
I started with isometrics at the far end range. Then I built into the deep chest fly, and now I was able to build into strength. Like it was a progressive thing, and I think. So I worked on this guy's program, which was kin stretch. Have you ever heard of kin stretch?
No.
It's like it's a different kind of movement system of like basically kinetic stretch of being able to actually contract the far end ranges.
Right.
And that's where I really learned the effect of it. And I did it like a hip flexor stretch like that, where you go into a scissors, like a split stretch, contract, open, and it was such a difference.
Right.
But the thing that I really wish more people knew is like, again, I don't want to say like static is useless, but of the forms of exercise and therapy, and I would rather someone spend more time doing strength training at a bigger range of motion than thinking that that any other stretch is going to do much. Depending on the situation.
Like you're talking about trying to increase like your flexibility, like you're saying you're better off.
And I guess I'm getting very semantic here.
Yeah.
I don't care about their flexibility, I care about their mobility.
Right.
And so if someone has really tight hamstrings, I'm not going to tell them not to static stretch something. And I will say there's certain situations if I can give them almost like a static stretch, but a dynamic stretch.
Right.
I'd rather someone be moving in and out of a couch stretch with contractions. I'd rather someone have like a hamstring stretch that moved the hamstring or something like that, like had movement to it.
Right.
But to feel like they owe themselves time for stretching of all the other things that we can do, walking, strength training, and mobility work that is putting like PNF stretching or far end range, I put static stretching in the lower tier. I will say that with a common exception I can imagine you'd agree with, is if someone's just not ready for it. Like if there's like someone just needs to practice holding a stretch. Like I think there's probably lower tiers, but
static stretching is perfect for someone who's never done anything before, right? Like that's
beginners.
Yeah, 100%. But I mean, everything's got its own benefits, right? Like when it comes to PNF, that's the increase, right? Like that's gonna be the best. But like from a dynamic standpoint, that's greatest for like a warm up. Yeah, exactly. Like let's say hockey, you're trying to get onto the ice or whatnot, right? Where your body's been through that range of motion and you have that control.
Yeah.
And like you said, prep. But yeah, static for sure has benefits to it. But yeah, I would agree, generally speaking, especially with like of that beginner population, to understand what it is, and you could definitely see you'll definitely get some gains from it. But yeah, it's not going to be nearly as great as like a PNF stretch for sure, without a doubt.
Yeah, and I think it's important for people to value tools in their priority. You know what I mean? And so I feel like I'll go back to like that list of
you got 5 minutes, go do a bunch of PNF stretching instead.
Or strength if you're not doing your fucking strength. It's like, I'm in pain, my shoulders hurt. And they're gonna think, do I need to stretch more? No, you probably need to actually have a bigger range of motion on your chest and have a stronger back.
What I did think of immediately when you're talking about working within that range, especially that newfound range, one of the things I always liked hearing from those Great Cook was exactly that of once you've got that newfound mobility,
use it.
Yeah, using it, right? Where it's kind of like hitting save on that document, right? Because like you can stretch out your hamstrings and 1 hour later you go back to exactly where you were, right? Because your body's going to revert back to its old movement patterns. But that being said, if you work within that new range, it's kind of like saying, hey dummy, we have this new range of motion, and you're hitting save on that document, which is something I always like that. I wonder if part of that, like what you're talking about, is it's because you're working within that range and you're kind of hitting save on that document, creating those new movement patterns. So
I totally agree, and that's actually why I like using some of the PNF stretching. I think it's even though it's not great for strength, I think it's great for the long term. I would do a PNF stretch with my clients at the start of the workout. But you got time between the PNF stretch, which is like an aggressive static stretch. Before you're doing a heavy set, because you're going to ramp up and do some other stuff. That it's like it's known in the literature that static stretching paired with strength training or like power training more specifically will decrease the power, but the net positive, A, it's going to be far enough away, it'll probably take 5 minutes or so. B, the net positive of you being in a better pattern is worth it. So I would put PNF as the prep. Then you have a gradual progression in your strength training. And
so you're saying you do PNF stretching prior to a training session?
Yes.
Yeah. I would, me myself, but I'm also an athletic therapist, I'd lean toward just doing the dynamic stretching because I find too many people.
Both.
Well, not even. I just stick to the dynamic, and the one reason why I say that is because your average population is not going to understand, hey, I got this newfound range of motion, and they might squat too deep into, a newfound range of motion that they never had before, right? So like, let's say, hey, my hips are feeling great. I'm going normally you're going down to 90 degrees, 225 on your back. Now you've done all this PNF stretching, you got all this great hip mobility. Now you're going past 90 degrees, and then all of a sudden you're at past 90 degrees with 225 on your back, where all of a sudden it's like, hey, your body's like, we've never been in this position before with this much weight, where like there be an increased likelihood of injury, right? As opposed to, like, that's the general population, right? So like I'm talking like high performance athletes might understand that and know that, but that's why I would stick to just that PNF stretching that dynamic stretching as your warm up. So I'd be more inclined towards that myself.
I understand that concern, and I'll say from a practical, from like seeing people. I'm not saying my view is the gospel. I will say that it's a priority, so I love it that they get it done. Yeah, it's like, if we can get that PNF, that right off the bat, like get you feeling like looser, deeper range of motion if you need to. Yeah. Right off the bat, great. Then we're gonna go do the strength training. Let's say you got squats. I haven't seen someone accidentally squat ass to grass. Right. I've put people in that position. Yeah. And you're saying like you have this newfound range, you might overdo it. I'm like, I actually haven't seen that. Yeah. Because if anything, they still have a bias to their program. Every time they're getting in that squat, it's like it is such a different movement. It's such a specific movement pattern that they've trained that range of motion to be like, find that squat depth, find that parallel. Yeah. And you also, especially with the squat, is that parallel is a great standard that's safe and effective. Totally. Right? I'm going to push back to you on that. Please. Because if it's 90, like if you know parallel, that's great, right? But we have different experiences where you haven't seen anybody like run into those issues. However, I have when it comes to, let's say, a goalie, right? Okay. So a goalie, prior to getting out on the ice doing their activity, they do all this PNF stretching. They go way deeper. Like I would never do it before an athletic event. Yeah. So, no, that's great. But if you think about an athletic event, so let's say, I don't know, like if you wanted to some kind of weightlifting, like I'm just trying to think of off the top of my head. So I honestly routinely do like a splits version of PNF stretching. Yeah. But it's mild. Right. You know what I mean? So I'm doing this. But you don't think weightlifting's an athletic event, like in itself? Like a gym session? Like if you know, hey, I can't go past parallel, perfect, that's great. Mm-hmm. But if someone just like, if they don't know, hey, I'm just going as deep as I possibly can, they might go that extra 10 degrees, 15 degrees, and now that is enough to set off that injury. So like, I'm glad you described that because I don't want to take away from powerlifters being athletes because I am one. For the people. For the people. Yeah. But it's like, the dynamic, especially because I also know being a goalie, the dynamic and the erratic movement that is a goalie, like high vulnerability. Like every time I go out there, it is a mobility session because I will put myself into a range of motion I wouldn't have done consciously for the sake of fucking stopping that puck. But when you're doing strength training, it is actually practicing it under very controlled conditions, asking yourself of specific movement patterns. Depending on the individual. Of course. So I think like if you, so this is maybe we could agree on this in between. Is that if you do this with someone, if someone is going to try to do PNF stretching, they're going to try to get a bigger range of motion, and I like it because people prioritize the injury prevention first. don't try to go ass to grass squats.
Yeah.
Don't try to overload a deep lunge unless you're going mild and you're going to try to know that you have that range of motion. Like, you use it and, you know, intentionally. Just because you open up your chest doesn't mean you grab dumbbells and you go to a fucking ridiculous load. Like,
that's what I'm saying. Like, I'm just saying, like, for example, you're saying, let's say you're doing a chest fly, right? So this is your mobility right here. You're doing this with 15 pounds, but after all your PNF stretch or whatever, maybe you got an extra 10 degrees, right? So now you're going from this range you've never been in before with that same 10 pounds. So my argument would just be, hey, maybe don't go just at that 10 pounds, because that might be enough to trigger an injury, right? As opposed to starting off, but people need to understand that and know that. So that's the way I look at it, where it's like, hey, there's no problem. That's great if you got all this newfound mobility. But I don't think the vast majority of the general public would actually know that. Of like, hey, I can handle 10 pounds, because this might seem normal to them, right? And they might not realize, hey, I got an extra like 5-10 degrees here, where that just feels normal to them. So that's what I'm saying with the squat, right?
This is even valuable in that, especially that situation. I actually value your advice there, because I have been giving that exercise to clients, and I have not giving them the specific direction of go fucking light.
Yes.
The top two, the bottom third matters most. It doesn't matter if it's light at the top. You are using 5s or 10s until that's easy and you progress. So I think that's a really good one. Something that just like popped in my head there. I'm not sure if you're familiar with this guy, but I thought
just like right there.
I hope so. Now, Joel Seidman is known on social media for 90-degree angles, and he tries to defend it on him. He's known as quite a shyster, and basically that he always says that this is like you prevent injuries. The top level athlete, and it has high level athletes that go to him, and he gets these athletes to not only do 90-degree angles, but also these random fucking chaotic things with barbells on their back and bands everywhere. So he even said on podcasts before, I heard him say, he's like, I put some of the crazier stuff online for sure. It gets looks, but we do a lot of basic stuff. But he just preaches these 90 degrees. He says that he has like research to it, but then buy his book, and it's just like bullshit, right?
Right. Conflict of interest, right?
Conflict of interest. But here's my real curiosity, your view of it. Because I actually do think he has an interesting point. Yeah. But I want to know your view of the 90-degree angle theory that he has.
Yeah, so there's two things I want to say on this. Because you were talking about earlier on Instagram feeds, or just scrolling feeds. There is actually something that I saw. I was like, that's actually like pretty smart. I did like it, which I will touch on it. So I remember way back when I'd seen him, some of the stuff he was doing. I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. But as time has gone on, I've just reverted so much back to the basics, where I'm like, do you really need to be doing all this crazy shit, right? Like, that can just be accomplished by a trap bar deadlift, right? So like, it's kind of fun. Like, I've just reverted back to simplicity, where it's like just back to basics is kind of the best in my opinion. But so one of the things I did see that I thought was interesting, because I was watching AJ do this a whole bunch of agility drills in the gym, and one thing that I thought that was kind of cool that I was watching a video of a running back, and the guy was just saying sometimes instead of just say, hey, let's just broad jump or jumping over like your hurdles or whatnot, we're just gonna go freestyle, where it's like you just gotta jump over it, like one touch in between, like to the next one, back over. It doesn't matter how you do it. It doesn't matter if you're doing it facing front, side, back. Doesn't matter what it is. And the whole theory behind it was like, let's say you're a running back, like, because it was an NFL running back doing it, where there's gonna be a lot of times your body's gonna be in weird positions, and it has to be able to handle that load. And I was like, yeah, that's kind of cool. Like every once in a while, doing like just a freestyle, something like that, where it's like put your body into those weird, uncomfortable positions that you're probably gonna be in a game setting, right? So I do see like a lot of value in that. So sometimes when I do see some of the things, weird, wacky stuff that he's doing, I'm like, I can kind of see what you're saying in regards to that. But generally speaking, I like just your basics, like your compound lifts, just everything that you've done before, and there's no need to, hey, let's load up this bar with 3 plates on one side, right? Like, but I do see the value in a lot of that stuff.
So in that
the 90-degree stuff, I don't know enough about too.
but that was the 90-degree stuff.
You'd have to tell me about it,
and well, I actually haven't looked into it enough to be like for sure, but actually, I like it for Gen Pop or an injury prevention model for athletes. Yeah. But he says that's all you need, which is like, well, then that isn't injury prevention, because we just talked about how if you don't strength train at far end ranges, you're not going to accumulate skill in that range, right? We just talked about how if I strengthen the deep stretch, my shoulder's more comfortable in that position. So there's no way it's 100% 90 degrees. That
you might know, but like, isn't it that like when it comes to things like squat, like you only need to get down to 90 degrees in order to like have
that's his argument.
Is that what he's saying? Like
his argument is that like most positions on the field of play for like a lot of things are like 90 degrees in the joints, and I actually look at that for more Gen Pop. Yeah. Where I'm like,
what do you mean by Gen Pop?
Gen Pop.
Oh, yeah.
Like just most people, the average Joe is like, I like rack pulls. I like a trap bar, even if it's a bit higher. I have a client where I'm like, I don't need you to get parallel. Like I actually have no justification for that.
Right.
If a client wants to be good at powerlifting and they want to talk about the numbers of the boys, I'm like, you're doing parallel. Right. Because that's the standard. Right. You want to do powerlifting, that's the sports standard. Like, don't deny that. If I will get someone to go down to their chest for a bench press, because it's to me, I don't think it's, unless you have a shoulder issue, they probably might not bench press. But it's just a relative, it's the consistent measure, and I don't think it's unhealthy. Yeah. If it is bad for their shoulders, they're just not bench pressing. Mm-hmm. But the 90-degree idea, I actually was a helpful thing for me, because if you have, just a mom that you're trying to train, and she's trying to get strong, I'm like, but she had a bad knee, I'm like, okay, 90 degrees in the knee, 90 degrees in the hip, fucking check mark, I'm happy. Yeah. We're progressively overloading, guess what? She's actually progressed into a deeper range of motion anyways, because she got more comfortable with it. Yeah. But if you at least go near 90 degrees, maybe a bit deeper, and like what people need to understand in the knee joint is that you have, it's not actually like parallel of the hip, right? Because once the knee is bent, like this, right? Like to get the knee is more than 90 degrees and the hip is more than 90 degrees at parallel. It's deeper than 90.
Yeah, well,
because of ankle flexion.
This depends on a number of factors, but generally,
on average, a person will have the knee flexion, and they'll go much deeper than 90 degrees in the knee joint and their hip joint.
Yeah, I can see that for sure. Yeah.
Right, and that's if it's parallel. So that's why I'm saying like the 90 degrees. And let's say someone even did have a bit of a shoulder issue if it was really deep, but they eventually want to build up their bench press. Then a board press makes sense, like that 90 degree. And I actually haven't even studied enough of like the overloading stuff, because my understanding is like Westside Barbell did it all the time. They would do rack pulls, they would do the board press, they would do more of that kind of stuff rather than overloading it in the full range of motion. Like if you don't want to do deadlifts off the ground, there are like a rack pull I think is one of the best. Yeah, it's such a simple thing. So I do want to talk about this because we talked about like and this is just something that I know I need to get better at. Yeah. Because you had mentioned about like all the things in the field of play, and whether you're an athlete, but athlete for sure, and for an everyday person, it just kind of remind me of like, I know I need to train the transverse plane better. Right. I realize I don't train a lot because
like in a transverse plane.
Technically, almost every move is a transverse plane. So people understand. You got the sagittal plane forward and back. You got the frontal plane, which is just dividing your body in two. But a lot of things that you do in fundamental training, you say traditional training, rotation, it doesn't twist you. It doesn't go to the side. It's a push-pull. Yeah. It's a squat hinge. A transverse plane movement would be something like a side lunge, or possibly like a rotation off a cable. Yeah. But then it occurred to me, I'm like, fuck, I don't even answer side lunges a lot. And I realized, like, how important do you think that is to train?
Well, it's kind of, it's a good question in the sense of just the population that you're dealing with. Like high-end athletes, the vast majority of training probably should be done in that, right? If you look at like,
and I have not been doing that. I do rotation,
baseball, like it's all rotation.
Everything.
Right?
I will always do a rotation, but I actually just even don't think I get people to side lunge enough.
Yeah, but if you look at your general population, you're always taught not to bend and twist, right? So
right.
So
that the effect of the bend and twist, they're afraid of. Don't lift with your back.
That's exactly right. So like squat down, bring it up, and then rotate, right? As opposed to just bend. But think about like your day-to-day life. Like you do it a million times. So So like I mean, it's not going to hurt you like that general population to do. But I feel like that's probably not such the forefront people think of because that's just not what they do. But there's a lot of values in chops, right?
Yeah, actually, I got to tell you, I only like certain chops. I'm biased on chops. So
tell me.
A sledgehammer swing, swing on a tire. Fucking just never done much for me.
Yeah.
I find it so maybe because I swing it from.
Do you find that's more of a cardio?
Even then, I don't like it as cardio.
Yeah, no, I'm not disagreeing with you.
Yeah, it's like it's not that hard.
Yeah, well, most people don't know how to swing a sledgehammer.
It might be my efficiency.
Keep your hand up high as opposed to letting hang down.
And that's the thing. Probably from me doing construction,
right.
I swing it accurate. I swing it efficiently.
Mm-hmm.
But like we put it into drills, and like that's the easiest part of the drill.
Yeah.
And like I see people getting people to do it. I'm like, I just like to me, it's like a good band rotation, a good men ball throw against the wall.
Totally. Yeah, I would go with that way before doing a sledgehammer.
And like, however,
it looks cool though. Right?
If you could put like I have seen this before, and I've wanted to set it up in the gym. I think we practice it a little bit. Mm-hmm. If you can get someone to hold the tire against the wall, big like the flip tire, hold that against the wall, then a very horizontal fucking tire swing at the wall. Love the horizontal plane. The thing I don't like about a chop, high to low, is just leverage. Right. You're just swinging leverage. It's just not that hard to me that I don't think you get the challenge of the core that you want out of the chop. AJ pointed this out. Yeah. The best thing is the opposite, the pull.
Right.
So when he goes on the Kaiser, he's like, I'm more concerned about you pulling back.
Yeah, why did he say that?
He says that for like an injury prevention, and I think that's what his main model was. Mm-hmm. I look at it because every push is a pull in the body if it's done in a rotation.
Yeah.
And so when you and what a lot of people don't think of when they're doing a slap shot or a golf swing or anything, they're thinking of the part of their limb that's going out. And I'm like, it's not that important as the pull. Right. If you have the pull, you are forcing the other side out immediately. And whenever I teach people boxing, I'm like, pull the other side and it fucking throws the other thing out.
Yeah.
If you don't, you actually end up off balance and you don't get the hit.
But that's just essentially controlling the eccentric, right?
When you're doing the pull?
Yeah.
No, I think there is an actual...
From that point, I look at baseball pitchers, for example, right?
Yeah.
Super important to be able to control that eccentric aspect.
For sure. That's actually that would be the injury prevention. For sure.
I would revert back to that side.
I think that's a primary a reason to do the pulling more. That's a second reason to do the pull. Is like you miss a punch, you got to pull. Mm-hmm. So that's a second reason. I actually think it drives the force better than even the push-up. So if you're going to do a landmine, kind of rock star, right? Every time I tell people, I'm like, you're not lifting this thing up, you're pulling it up. And when you see people get it, and they're like, oh, I feel my hips now.
Right.
And it's the same thing in punching. Like when I get people to pull the other side back and then they release the punch, and they're like, oh, fuck, I feel my obliques.
But is that because now you're training them and they're learning how to actually properly use like their hips to generate power?
Yes, like that's what I mean.
Yeah, that's okay.
That is what I mean.
Oh, dude, totally.
The pull is training the hips better than if you just think of the projection out.
Right.
And so that's why, like, when you say chops, I'm very picky on chops.
Right.
Because not every chop is the same. And if you just get someone to grab something up and down, I'm like, it's just not going to apply to your sport that much. I actually love a low to high chop where you bring it down, you get the back involved, and you toss it up. But yeah, so Love that you brought that up because I'm obviously passionate about that.
Yeah. Got fired up there for a second on Chubbs.
Okay. We're rolling off these. What time is it? Just so I know roughly, because we got a few good topics here.
8:30.
We're at 8:30. Okay, well let's top this off before Chris comes out.
Okay.
I do want to talk about this because it's something I have been ignoring. Adductors. How important are adductors to train routinely?
I don't know. That's a good question.
Because it's because hip flexors get attention, right?
Yeah,
Glutes get attention.
I feel like everything should be trained, right?
Right,
it's probably the neglected.
But that's the thing. Hip flexors always get attention. You're not fighting.
Here's what I'll say. This is based on my experience with sports, depending on like the sport, very, very important. Like if you're a hockey player or a soccer player,
for sure,
incredibly important. Where I've seen research, especially when it comes to soccer players in injury prevention, if they just do Copenhagen planks, that they've incorporated it with like a partner that just as your warm up, you're just holding for 30 seconds, and it drastically reduces the risk of injury.
And what sport was that?
What's that?
What sport?
Soccer.
Yeah,
like Premier League. Like that's one of the things I do know that they actually have incorporated, where it's like, hey, me and you, we're teammates. It's part of our warm up, we're just doing just like a plank, right? Just holding that.
Plank.
Yeah. Exactly.
That's like I heard the same thing with the Nordic.
Yeah. Exactly. So totally neglected. But think about like how many adductor exercises you actually know, right?
Copenhagen planks.
Yeah.
Copenhagen, man, I was like, and side lunges.
That's those are the two things I always think of, and there's not really many more where it's like it's not sexy.
It's hard to do off a cable.
Yeah.
It's really hard to do off a cable where you can get stability and actually drive your leg in. And I think the other thing I'll mention is you raise a great point. That's why it's like how is it important? You said, well, what's the injury risk for? And so it's like you're going to train your adductors when you're squatting. I would say, so you mentioned great hockey players, people who are sprinting.
Your mom's not straining her groin.
Unlikely.
Right. Your dad, like general population will not.
Powerlifters.
Yeah.
I was like, I learned that from my last therapist there, like Jen Rogan. She was like getting my adductor going. I was like, this motherfucker's weak.
Yeah.
And so that was my realization. Is like you raised a great point though. So if someone has a powerlifting goal, let's train those adductors. If you're a hockey player, I would argue like just from working with a boxer, unless they just had that injury, they don't end up in that split position too much. So it's like a lower risk. But I'm glad that we covered that because like when you're looking at what you should train in your strength training, what is the highest probability of risk of injury,
right?
And then most of it should be fundamentally balanced, right? You balance your body, right? That's squat, hinge, push, pull, a single leg movement, a minimum, and then you want to have some sort of plank or a stability core movement, and then specifically your injury prevention requirements, right? Like,
I'm curious. I don't know what the ratio is strength from adductors to abductors. Right. But like you always hear hamstring to quads. It's 2 to 1.
Is it? Oh, it's 2 to 1.
Yeah, normally I think it was 2 to 1, but
you could be right.
I'd have to check it out.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, that's always the ratio that you hear, right? You always hear about hamstring to quad, but you never hear about.
And so we should specify that so people know. Your quad strength is okay if it's twice the strength of your hamstring. But if it's more, if the hamstring's weaker than that, that could put you susceptible for a knee injury.
Yeah, like your hamstring should be strong.
It should be at least half as strong as which is kind of a hard test. Like, what would you imagine? Would that be like? Because how do you do that 1-to-1, right? Like, you look at your hamstring curl machine, and the machines are so different. But just basically, I think it just reminds people, like, hey, don't have weak hamstrings. And I think that is even something I've neglected.
What's the ratio? What were you saying?
I thought it was 60-40.
60-40? Yeah, no, I could see that. I don't know.
That's just a number that pops in my head.
I don't know why I always think 2 to 1, but I mean, this is also like education from back in the
But I actually, and like again, like I'm looking at 2 different machines. I'm like, the one machine I have at Brickhouse, I'm like, I'm a bitch. I'm like 70 pounds. And then on the other one, on my quad extension, like I got big quads, is like 165. I'm like, okay, I don't think I'm even 2 to 1. So it could be a part of my knee issue.
I feel like Chris would definitely know this, especially with ACLs.
Yeah, I'll have to ask him.
Yeah.
Well, I think we got through a lot here.
Yeah.
I think this is. I got one last question for you.
Yeah, lay it on me, man.
What is your most recent ambition? What are you most excited coming down the pipeline?
Oh man, we got a few things going on, some we can't talk about right
Yeah,
now.
that's okay. What are you willing to share?
Yeah. Down the road,
plug your stuff.
Yeah, we'll definitely talk about down the road here.
Yeah.
Maybe on the third time, on the third go around. Super pumped about like just finishing school because like it's been 2.5 years. Yeah, 2.5 years to do my MBA. So always nice finishing school. Seeing where the
that's so cool, man. Going after MBA.
Oh my god,
that's so tough.
Dude,
Every time I see this guy, he says, "Oh, man,
yeah, just stressing.
Well, that's gonna be me. That's gonna be me next year. I'll go back to school, so you're gonna see me. So.
Yeah. It's funny between you, me, and
AJ.
that guy. Someone's always
in school.
in school and never
it's year to year.
Yeah. So now it's your turn to get it done. We were laughing the other day because we're like, Nicole is going back. He's getting more educated than us. We got to catch back up to, right? So that's the one I'm finally happy to tick off. The one that I can't talk about right now, which down the road we'll talk about.
Yeah.
That's an exciting one, and then just being a dad, man. That's
a big thing.
That's the biggest thing, right? We'll see how that experience goes.
It is legitimately the hardest thing.
Yeah, that's what I hear, right?
Yeah.
But but happy to see where the clinic's going to go now, especially now that school will be done and I can focus a little bit more on that. And happy to, instead of always just being studying business like articles, now I get to actually go back to this stuff.
And get into it.
Yeah, honestly, like I'm so tired of this studying business all the time. Where I'm like, okay, I want to get back to
and you know what's funny is like I remember you almost like need to change the scene sometime because I remember you talking about how you were interested in the business side. You wanted to Chris to run the clinic, and you're like, I want to get back in there. I just want to work.
There's a fine balance. I'm just trying to figure out which that is, right?
For sure.
So,
Well, that's great. Thank you so much for doing this, man.
Yeah, buddy.
And I will have you on again. We didn't get to half my topics, so that's
I know.
I had a feeling we were gonna flow.
Yeah,
I had a feeling we were gonna flow. It was good. It was a good chat. Thank you again, Rich. I really had fun in that conversation. The hour flew by. I had a list of probably 6, 7, maybe even 8 things. And I don't think I went over most of them. Rich even said after, he's like, I was trying to set you up for a few of those. And I just said, I got to feel how the conversation goes. And I had a lot of fun. I loved debating him a little bit, some friendly debate. And I thought it was hopefully really useful for you. And sometimes I hope it doesn't get too over people's heads who aren't familiar with the things we are, like the FMS stuff, which is functional movement screen. Physiotherapists will use it. Some strength trainers can use it. And it was a system that came out and essentially like gets you to do these handful of movements. And then they would try to predict or assess your injury risk or imbalances and try to address that. Now, we both talked about it, like there's some really good insight there, but it doesn't, it's not an exact science. It was a system used, they treated it like a science, but it was more of a system. And it's a way to teach a lot of different people a fundamental idea of test and screen and then apply. The one thing that I think I noticed and learned the most about, I think we talked about it a little bit, but I want to highlight is that it's a kinetic chain when it comes to injuries and problems, right? So if you have a shoulder, it's not just loosen the shoulder and make it not hurt. It's loosen the shoulder, try to get a new range of motion in the shoulder, strengthen the weak muscles, but then strengthen the shoulder to be dynamic and stable in a kinetic chain. And this is something I learned from my physiotherapist that actually had me do all my, fundamental treatment like that, but then do like a kettlebell get up, which she would have gotten from the FMS is like, get your hip to work off of your shoulder. So your shoulder knows how to coordinate itself and it works on stability, because that's really imperative for the full spectrum of how a muscle needs to be utilized, not just strong, not just like, because if you're just doing a simple external rotation with your hand, like you're just doing what you see people do with those, some people doing the external with the weights, they might do it with a cable. And it's just such an isolated movement. That's not how it's actually used. And I do hate using the term functional too loosely, which people will, but there is certain exercises that have just the right amount of instability that give you a more use for functional movements because a lot of functional movements have a lack of stability. With that being said, you don't got to go to the far end range and be doing everything on a booster or stability ball because you're not fucking walking on those things. And that's where some of that social media stuff goes really far. When we're talking about Joel Seedman, he just makes things crazy. He's known in the strength conditioning space to be getting guys putting barbells on their backs with bands and weights and kettlebells hanging from the barbells while that guy is on a booster or on a stability ball and saying, yeah, do heavy stuff and be able to do all the unstable stuff. And there is something to be said about an unstable weight. Like there's ton of strength coaches. Well, it's the right amount of instability. It's the right amount of strength. It's not just make this chaotic. And if there is an inherent injury risk for something, it is probably like too high of an injury risk. It's probably not worth it. And you see some of the things he sets up, it's ridiculous. And I will say that I do believe that I learned from Joel Seedman's perspective is like, not everyone needs to go past 90 degrees in a joint. And there's reason to just train 90 at certain things. That's why I like clients doing rack pulls and trap bars or box squats. It's like, let's go close to 90 or a little bit past, because that's enough for the joint and the muscle to be healthy. And then we can work deeper range of motions with safer exercises rather than maxing out the back squat or the deadlift. You don't need that full range of motion all the time. But then maybe you do RDLs that are deeper for the back. Maybe you do a single leg, lunge or walking lunge or Bulgarian split squat and you go deeper because you can just go body weight or a few pounds. But I do think that there's something to utilizing 90-degree training efficiently and effectively without injury risk, but it should not be everything. And that's what Joel Seedman will always talk about, how he has these research articles, read my book, it's all in there, and then there's no actual research articles to back it up. But the other thing I hope you learned was the idea of re-educating muscles. I want to highlight that because that's something you got from the FMS, and this kind of overlaps with the stretching and everything. But essentially, once you've done something, you've loosened up your muscle, whatever the injury area is, then re-educated because it has this new length of muscle, this new range of motion you utilize. You're educated by loading it just the right amount. It could be with a kettlebell, make it a little bit unstable, or even with a regular dumbbell. Let's say it's your shoulder, you loosen your shoulder up, you get a better range of motion, you strengthen the external rotator, and you make sure you're loosening the front, the chest, the internal rotator, and then let's do a shoulder press overhead, and plus you could probably even loosen up your lats because your lats would resist the overhead movement. And then now that you have this shoulder with a looser lat, looser chest, a stronger external rotator, let's do an overhead press. And maybe your body can actually remember that overhead press position better than it did before. And that's the idea of re-education. So whenever you have something you're trying to recover, you loosen. I actually say kind of loosen also kind of goes into foam rolling. And so you loosen and then you lengthen. So you try to do some sort of a stretch and then you strengthen. And I would even add to that and you stabilize that strength. So, I mean, that falls into even talking about the foam rolling and making sure you always realize that foam rolling is a numbing agent. That's fundamentally what it is. And I will say, honestly, sometimes I just roll to get rid of the tension that I feel. That doesn't mean I've loosened up that muscle. It means I don't feel it as much and I can get deeper in my squat when I'm doing my squat pattern. I did it like yesterday. And I know it doesn't fix it, but it's enough to get it so I can get my lift and still move pretty well. And it's like my hip doesn't feel worse today. But to make that foam rolling more useful, I would even take it a step farther. And if I really do hope to do this, I should foam roll if I had the time. I would foam roll and then I would do PNF stretching, which I'm going to talk about. Then I would go into doing more range of motion stuff and then re-educate. And even when I did the mobility challenge I had done just over a year ago, this was with Move. Beard the Best You Can Be is on his Instagram, but he had this kin stretch program. I'm assuming kinetic stretching, which is essentially moving in your stretch. But the big thing we would do in his trainings was you work on this PNF form of stretching, and then we have to re-educate. We have to actually do something to make sure the muscle actually controls that new range of motion. And that's what, remember, it's the nervous system I talked about. Like the nervous system is what is preventing you from reaching something. So unless you do it, unless you make the muscle know it needs to use it, it won't use it. So it's not just stretching. Stretching is even just static stretching, mostly just numbs things. But the PNF stretching, which now we'll talk about, that's the thing that is actually causing a contraction at far end range. As I mentioned, the form of the, so PNF actually stands, I'll tell you the unnecessarily scientific term, but it's proprioceptive neuromuscular facilitation. Yeah. Proprioceptive neuromuscular facilitation. I'm pretty sure that's what the N stands for. But just know it as PNF, which is essentially a contract relax technique. There's a couple of different techniques. One of them is to contract relax and to go deeper. So, there's actually stretch labs in the city now, which essentially they'll hold the stretch, or you could hold the stretch in a doorway, as we talked about. And then you contract against that door and you try to create resistance and you try to push down so that you're actually creating almost like an isometric, which means no change in the muscle length, but you're adding a ton of tension. And then you can relax and hang in that stretch. Or you can do what's the crack method, which is contract, relax, antagonist, contract. And that's the one I'm an even bigger fan of, because I noticed that's a way deeper stretch, because you're literally pulling yourself deeper. So if I was doing that door stretch, I'd be contracting where I feel a stretch in the door, I contract and I try to make that isometric. I'm trying to actually tire out the chest so it feels like it's pushing weight there. And then I do the opposite contraction. So I'm actually pulling my shoulders back in the doorway as if I'm trying to externally rotate, as if I'm doing like a W or a face pull. And then I relax and I hang in there. Now, the PNF or the crack method that I was utilizing was about, usually in the system I was on, it was like 60 seconds of just a passive stretch, 20 seconds of an active contraction in the stretched muscle, 20 seconds of an antagonist contract, or the opposite, and then hang again for 1 to 2 minutes. Now, I do a fast version of this, my clients, for mobility prep, and we'll do 20 passive, 20 contraction, 20 opposite, and repeat that 2 to 3 times. And that's a great prep to me. I still stand by. I think this is great. Most people aren't even contracting it hard enough to make it a true PNF mobility enhancer. It'll probably help a little bit and then plateau, but it's enough where they get into their lift. If we're doing the chest one, the chest is a little looser. If they're doing the split stance, which I like because the split gets a hamstring and the hip flexor, it's enough again to have those hips a little looser when you want to get into the next movement. And I still stand by what I was mentioning with him. Like, I think PNF is safe, done for most people. If you're talking about PNF and you do that contract relax before, like, let's say you're a powerlifter, I would do a mild version before. I think I did do a mild version before my lift, but it wasn't making me go ass to grass squats by accident, right? What he was referring to there, again, with like the goaltending and the skills, like if you do an adductor stretch and then you go to actually do the sport as a goaltender, oh, fuck yeah, I can see that end up bad. But I think it's a healthy thing, especially if you find that you have some joints that are really limited. It could be maybe your hips, you can't get them really wide, your glutes. Let's say you can't bring your foot up on your leg very easily. That's a sign that your glutes are tight. Hip flexor itself, and certainly chest overhead positions. I look up PNF stretches on those, and that will make a big difference for your joint health. I do want to just top off on the icing conversation. Don't feel bad about icing, and don't feel bad about not icing. That is my fundamental take. Hopefully it came through in the discussion. You can ice if you want to. Like, he made a point, like, is it that detrimental? I just don't think it's that beneficial unless the person is so annoyed by whatever this thing is. It could be, like the knee, it could be a joint, but don't think that is like you eating your vegetables. It's not the most important thing. That the most important thing is, we had mentioned, immediate rest. And then as soon as you feel healed, then you want to improve range of motion, and you want to improve it at the right pace so it doesn't hurt it again. And then you want to gradually get strength back to it. So by all means, use ice if it feels good, especially if you can't get sleep. I'm actually huge. I would say definitely ice something if it's preventing your sleep, but also don't feel bad if you don't. And I think the only thing to top off there that I think I've learned very recently, that I'm not paying attention to enough, and it actually came from a client's recommendation from physio, is like, I don't do enough lateral movement. And I even saw that within my strength training. When I went from not goaltending for years and then going to goaltending, I'm like, holy shit, I do not move left to right. As a power lifter, bodybuilder, it's push, pull, it's forward and back. It is not a lot of side to side. And so trying to dive across that net to get that puck, oh my goodness, my adductors, they were sore. But what was good is, like, because I had been playing goaltending in the last 3 to 4 years since COVID, and I haven't had to re-educate that muscle. So, even if I take some time off, I can go back into it and it's there. But I do feel like I need to add more of that lateral movement, and that could be part of the reason why my knee even gives me issues. And I don't see a lot of people side lunging. So one of the good arguments though is like who needs to do it and how often. And I just took some advice from Jordan Zayed. He said that he was taking it like in 12 weeks he's doing it 8 weeks out of the quarter. I would argue you probably do it every other program, or maybe some sort of lateral movement. And that, working off a transverse, as we say, it could be lateral left to right, it could be a rotation. I just think as anyone, you've got to worry about left to right, and that could be strength or stability. So maybe it's a side plank, or we mentioned talking about the adductors, a Copenhagen plank, which I'm doing all the time now, but that's because I need the adductor strength. But some sort of a lateral movement that you're stabilizing yourself on. So let's say in this program, you don't have a side lunge, but you do a Palloff press, which is where you stand out perpendicular from a cable. You're not facing the cable, you're like perpendicular, and you're pulling out that cable. It's actually trying to pull you into your side. Palloff press, and you get in a good stance. You make it awkward to do, but you reach it out in front of you and it's trying to twist you, but you don't. So now this is preventing a left to right movement. This is kind of like lateral training. Now, I'm not technically on the transverse plane, but it's enough where my body is fighting in the transverse plane. So I would see it as a useful one for that. You could also then just do a rotation, just a simple torso rotation, but make sure you listen to the core rotation tip. You want a good core rotation, you pull, you don't push, you pull first. So if I'm going to do a cable rotation, I want to get those obliques fired up. I swing the hip back. I turn that top hand first, then I push the back hand through. If you want an effective pull to push, and you'll feel way more torso naturally. People instinctually want to push instead of pull, and they don't get as good of a rotation. So that'll make a huge difference if you really want to get those obliques. And then, like we had mentioned, just fundamentally getting some lateral movement is going to be good depending on the sport, especially if you're a hockey player and stuff like that. And that's the importance of the adductor. Like I was like, okay, who really needs it? But this is a great point, is like, the people who need it is like the injury prevention, because you're going to train adductors when you're doing like a sumo stance. So today I was just even getting people to do a sumo stance landmine squat. So a landmine is an angled barbell. So when you put a barbell against a wall or something like that, and there's sometimes actually fixings that you can put a barbell into to make it into a landmine. Another quick tip, if you don't have that fixing and you don't want to ruin the wall that you're pushing up against, you cut open a tennis ball and you put that open tennis ball into the end of the barbell, and now it's just going to swivel and it won't hurt the wall at all. And it swivels very nice. And so big fan of that, huge tip. So doing that as a sumo stance, and one of the clients that was doing it, she's like, oh my goodness, yeah, I haven't felt this before. It's like, your adductor? She's like, yeah. So that's a great adductor exercise. But then to isolate it is actually difficult. So we're looking at something like a wide stance squat. We're looking at side lunges. We're looking, if you could get a slide board is an excellent one, but that's very rare. If you do a towel slide on a very slippery surface, that could work as well. There's also like sliders that you can get like from Amazon or something, and it's basically put your foot on it and it slides. But to come back to it, it's like, if you need it. If you're a powerlifter, you probably should. If you're a hockey player, you probably should. If you have a lot of lateral movement in your sport, you probably should. If you don't have an inherent weakness, I would just say vary your stance, but also feature in, side lunges more often. But I think there's a lot there. I think that covers a lot of great information around strength and conditioning and injury prevention. Remember that strength is always injury prevention. That is the fundamental, most important thing when it comes to being healthy and strength training. It is making you injury resilient. That's the most important thing long term. Certainly I love muscle. There's aesthetic reasons. There's reasons to help maintain your muscle mass for metabolism. But I think it's even more important that we remain injury resilient, especially as you age, to not fall. Like that lateral movement we just talked about, that'll actually prevent falls more likely, because you're more resilient to go left to right and you can handle instability better. Let's say you do fall. And as I mentioned about the shoulder stability, to grab your shoulder, to have it hit the ground and not come out, or to make you fall too fast. And it's because the strength training made your shoulder stable. So really, really important that you see it that way. And that if you have an option to do something to get out of pain, strength at a big range of motion is fundamentally what's going to help you the most. So I hope you learned a lot there. If you're looking for a good athletic therapist, you're on the west side of Winnipeg, go see Rich at Perimeter Therapy. I'll leave his information in the show notes. He'll certainly be on another podcast because I had a bunch of other stuff to talk to him about, and I love doing those in-person ones. So, and one more thought just about my personal business, my online one-on-one coaching is it's important for you to know as a listener. You've been listening a long time and you watch my social media and everything like that. It's important to know that in the fall, I'm going back to school, and this back to school is kind of going to be a price increase because I have a very heavy client list, more clients than I've ever had. And on top of that, going back to school, time is valuable. So the prices are going to go up, but I wanted to give you a heads up well in advance. You got 4 weeks in advance here. And as of September 1st, they're going to go up. So if you've been kind of humming and hawing, you only got this month to make that play, and then the price isn't going to go down again. So this will be the cheapest you can get the program again. And if you want to, just, reach out to me on social media or on my newsletter. If you're on my newsletter, say, hey, let's chat. Let's talk about a program, because I'd love to help you out. Love to get you going if you're having that summer slump, but I just needed to let you know well in advance. Regardless, thank you for listening today. I always appreciate you. Any time that someone can spend this much of their day when there's so many podcasts out there and listening to me, it means a lot. So thank you so much as a listener, because I'm always here just trying to help you live your best life, going after your own ambitions, because we know life is not about the pursuit of happiness, but rather the happiness within your pursuit. And I'll catch you next time.